Subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to get all the latest updates.
Perhaps this cartoon by the very, very talented Satish Acharya said it all. Prashant Bhushan was asked by the Supreme Court to pay a fine of 1 rupee. That was his sentence, his punishment for contempt of court. It was a judgment that Justice Arun Mishra, among others, along with the 3-judge bench, of course, delivered just before Justice Mishra is all set to retire. Many people believe that this has been a moral victory for Mr. Bhushan, who has since said he will be paying the 1 rupee fine, but he reserves the right to challenge his conviction and his sentence thereafter if he so wishes. Prashant Bhushan and others like his comrade Yogendra Yadav are now calling for this 1 rupee moment to be the beginning of some sort of mass assertion of the people's right to speak and indeed the citizens' right to dissent. What is the significance of this verdict? Because it has become about much more than Prashant Bhushan himself. On the program today, Yogendra Yadav is with us. We're also joined by Major General Dhruv Katoch. General Katoch was one of those, as civil society was arguing amongst itself, who actually signed a letter against Prashant Bhushan. We're also joined by Shubhrashtha, a columnist and commentator, and by Maneesh Chibber, a veteran journalist who knows the judiciary better than I think anybody else. Yogendra Yadav, I'll start with you. I do believe that it is a kind of aha moment for Prashant Bhushan and indeed for democracy at large. And the Supreme Court clearly decided to back off from the brink. You have called for this to be the beginning of something larger. What is that larger movement that you think can spring from this moment?
First thing first, Barkha, I really do not see this as a victory for anyone or defeat for anyone. In this country, Supreme Court of India must win. When Supreme Court wins, all of us win. When Supreme Court is diminished, all of us are diminished. And what we have witnessed today is actually opening of a window through which people's voice can reach the institutions where it should reach. I do not know if that window would be sustained, expanded, turned into a door, an opportunity. But many people felt that for a long time, when it seemed that you could not speak out, here is a window, here is an opportunity that has opened up. And the manner in which Prashant stood his ground, with humility, but with integrity. I will say what I think is true. I shall not offer insincere apologies. I shall undergo whatever sentence punishment you give me, whether it's 6 months or 1 rupee. So the moment it came, Prashant did not say, no, now I will dare the court by not paying 1 rupee, because picking a fight with the court was never the point. The point was simply to say, I speak the truth and I accept the punishment. As he had said right in the beginning, he had said, I'm happy to undergo any punishment that the court gives me. Court was pleased to give 1 rupee. Prashant Bhushan would have equally accepted it if it was 6 months or whatever.
Okay.
How do we take it forward is the real question. Because it was not about Prashant Bhushan. And it was certainly not about one judge. It is about right to freedom to speak truth. And mind you, Prashant Bhushan is far more privileged than most people who have been struggling to speak truth in this country under far more difficult conditions with zero media visibility. Prashant Bhushan is lucky that he has some visibility. He has some resources to fall back upon. And therefore, we all felt, and we have called upon the people to join a movement, a national movement for beginning tomorrow. Number 1, in which we say, rupee 1, everyone. Everyone contributes a rupee, not for Prashant Bhushan, but for all those warriors of conscience in this country who are struggling, lying in jails, not even being tried for years on end. So, a national fund for them. Number 2, a national campaign to celebrate the idea of freedom to speak truth. Satyameva Jayate, which is our national motto. We begin that. We celebrate that in different ways between 2nd of September to 2nd of October. So through you, because I know your viewers are of a different kind. They are the ones who celebrate this freedom of expression. So through you, I would like to appeal to everyone to please join this 1 month of celebration of Bol. Bol ke lab azad hai tera.
You're making a very eloquent, poetic point here. But what is going to be interesting is whether our larger public discourse is going to take a cue from what has happened in the Supreme Court today. I think that is important. And I want Maneesh, before I get Shubhrashtha and Major General Katoch in, Maneesh, just because you know the court inside out, just because this has happened before Justice Arun Mishra is about to retire, Justice Mishra himself turning down farewells amid consistent rumors that he may be denied that farewell, which the Bar Association in fact denied. How do you read what has happened in the Supreme Court today?
No, it's very clearly, both sides decided that, enough had been said, both inside and outside the court. And I think, no institution's cause is served when an institution is seen as going after an individual. Prashant Bhushan, as Yogendra Yadav has rightly said, is a privileged person. But having said that, Prashant Bhushan, he's a good lawyer. He's seen as somebody who takes up the cause of the people, the common man. And for the court, the highest court of the land, to go after somebody like him, it was always, even if it is hypothetical, let us assume for a moment that Prashant Bhushan had actually committed a crime or said something which was defamatory, derogatory, or contemptuous, which was actually these two tweets were not. I am very clear about that.
Yeah.
But if that was the case, even then the institution has to think whether it wants to be seen as going after somebody, as if Supreme Court has to be very, very large-hearted. And today, I can, because one has been talking to people within the judiciary, there was, I haven't said this in so many words anywhere, there was some bit of disquiet within the judiciary, including in the highest judiciary, that, is this what we should really be doing in these pandemic hit times? Right. So Justice Arun Mishra's bench has very, I think, wisely decided that, this is not an issue on which they should be going after Prashant even now. So 1 rupee Prashant has agreed to pay. At the same time, he reserves the right to go in appeal, which his press conference is very, he said it very clearly. So I think a quietus has been given to the entire issue.
So I just want to remind everybody that this is being preceded by a 108-page judgment on 2 tweets. So while I'm glad the court has stepped back from the brink, it did take 108 pages, and spending the time and energy of the court at this time. I also think Yogendra Yadav makes the very important point of those who are not in the headlines, who languish in jails, for whom that 1 rupee is not the trivial sort of stuff of memes that it has become in a good-hearted way today. I think that's a very important point to make. Shubhrashtha, can I bring you in now? So much of our conversation over issues in this country has been coarsened. We are either national or anti-national, for or against. There are so many of us who just want the freedom to be free thinkers, who want to enjoy the rights of this democracy, the duties of this democracy. Do you think the Supreme Court verdict should remind us all that we can disagree without name calling?
Yes, Barkha-ji, it has always been the case. In fact, the national conservative movement, and I don't prefer to call it the right-wing movement in this country, has always been about free speech. This whole business of name calling, putting a label before anyone, even before the person articulates a viewpoint, has really been the den of the leftists. Now, I agree with Yogendra Yadav ji in all the poetic renditions of his speech, but let's understand that the metaphorical poesy also points out to a very sinister kind of a campaign that perhaps he's launching in all goodwill, but it will be hijacked by the Maoists, for example, who have created some kind of a sinister attack on the body politic of this nation and every value this nation stands for, in the name of fighting for the most marginalized communities of this country. Barkha-ji, we must understand, and I want to put it at the outset that I don't agree with Prashant Bhushan. I don't think ideologically we agree on anything that he stands for. But the way in which this whole contempt of court narrative really took, became the forefront of all the conversations, I think it might have set a very wrong trend had the Supreme Court not acted in the way it did. I completely agree with you. The whole conversation was about free speech. And as a conservative thinker myself, I think I stand with every demand for free speech because, essentially in India at least, we are all against, that very Islamic notion of having a unilateral interpretation of things. We are all fighting when we talk about Hindu movement and Hindu rights. It's essentially about that. Yogendra Yadav ji might not like what I'm saying, but please allow me my freedom of speech to say, to say and feel what I do and what I have interpreted.
I was just going to say, why are we bringing Hindu Muslim into this conversation? Not because I want to censor you, but because I'm puzzled as to why we would take this moment and bring religion into it. But I'll let Yogendra Yadav intercede briefly and then I'll come to General Katoch because I could see Yogendra wanting to say something. Yogendra, briefly, please.
I just wanted to say two things. I think we should have a challenge, maybe on your channel. Speak for 2 minutes without talking about Hindus and Muslims. Let's speak about Mars, let's speak about Corona, and for 2 minutes, let's not talk Hindu-Muslims. Some people might find it very difficult to pass that challenge. I completely agree with what Shubhrashtha is saying about freedom of speech. And just extending her logic, it seems that the court should not have started this case in the first instance. In the middle of pandemic, you pick up 2 tweets. So much time of the court. I mean, just imagine if the court had spent its time meaningfully in those trying a few dozen of those thousands of cases that are waiting. So I think her logic indicates that the Supreme Court should not have taken it up in the first place. And I want to assure Shubhrashtha, I really hope the next regime does not go after people like you. But if it does, Prashant Bhushan will be there to defend your right to speech as well.
Barkha ji, may I have my 10 seconds?
Yeah, 10 seconds because General Katoch is waiting. Please go ahead.
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
Barkha, this is why I began by saying that perhaps let's be a little open. When Yogendra Yadav ji makes a plea, somehow it is metaphorical poesy. When I talk about the Hindu-Muslim angle, people forget to see any poetry into it and bring the current contextual, interpretations to brand it as a communal narrative. We have to get ahead of that. The other thing, a small thing which I wanted to bring to the table is, let's move beyond leftist campaign lines and opposition campaign lines. We all know, actually, the conversation during this pandemic should have been the kind of coverage you did, for instance. But how many people from the opposition camp were really taking a challenge I've been giving, Yogendra Yadav ji gave a challenge. I want to give a counter challenge. I will come out and support the movement of the opposition if they set up exactly the same tents that they set up in different parts of India, from Bihar to Bengal to Orissa to Assam, everywhere to Kanyakumari also, in the name of anti-CAA. Please put up these tents in the name of employment, jobs, and come what may, whatever issue.
I think that's a fair point. And I will
support their initiative.
So you say that I don't agree with anything you say. I'm saying to you today that I think the unwillingness of much of the opposition to actually mobilize at the grassroots has been the failure of the opposition. I think none of us would disagree with that. General Katoch, let me briefly get you in. As someone who signed on against Mr. Bhushan, now again, you don't have to agree with him. You can agree with him sometimes, disagree with him sometimes, but that's what we are about as a country. We can all have completely different opinions without the court hauling us up. Do you regret having signed on to that letter against him, in the light of the fact that the Supreme Court has finally shown the broader shoulders that it should have shown in the first place?
No, I think, Barkha, all of you have got it hopelessly wrong. Firstly, I want to get on the question of free speech. Yeah. You see, when Shubhrashtha was speaking, she gave her point of view, and I see Mr. Yogendra Yadav nodding his head like this. Well, that is the point. Look at Voltaire. When you look at the French Revolution, he said, I disagree with everything you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. The problem in this country is there's only one view which people consider to be right. And so long as you support that view, you are considered to be a liberal, pro-democracy, pro-liberty, pro-everything. But if you alter yourself from that view, you express an opinion which is different to their belief systems, then you will have people shaking their heads.
But may I just
just a minute.
Okay.
Let me, after that, now.
Okay.
Who is Prashant Bhushan? He's a nobody. He was never the issue. Please make it. Prashant Bhushan is irrelevant. He is not the issue.
Neither is Mr. Yogendra Yadav, neither am I. The issue is the integrity of our institutions. We have a few institutions which have great integrity. They may be functioning well, they may not be functioning well, but that's what we've got. Now, if we are looking for a perfect institution, let us get it there. But there is a segment of society, they only hit at these institutions. They hit at your parliament. Okay, your parliament is not good enough, fine, let's change the system. Don't hit at the parliament. That's what we've got. They hit at your election commission. All these people who have signed that document, they're irrelevant. Their names are irrelevant. As far as I'm concerned, I don't read their names. I read the material which has been written. And I feel hurt because the very essence of democracy which we talk about is being destroyed by these very people, but hitting out in the manner in which they do at these institutions.
So let me just come in briefly.
So they hit out your election commission, they hit out at your parliament, they hit out at your armed forces, and now they hit out at the Supreme Court. Now, just one more minute, and then after that I'll take your questions. Coming to this judgment, I think the Supreme Court has done it well. The question is not whether he was fined 1 rupee or $1 billion or 10 billion. The question is the Supreme Court has held him guilty. He is a felon in the eyes of the law, period. And that is the correct status. Now, let us not fool ourselves. Oh, the court has let him off with 1 rupee or 2. It is the intent behind it. Now, if Yogendra Yadav had the courage, he should have said, I won't pay the fine, put me in jail. Itna dam usme bhi nahi hai.
Sir, if he had said that, if he had said that, you would have said he submitted himself to the punishment of the court. वो भी नहीं किया उन्होंने.
It doesn't really matter.
You made your point.
The point is, he is not the issue. Neither are any of us in the panel.
I've got your sentiment.
It is the broader concept of what we believe in our India. What is freedom of speech? Now, freedom of speech means for some people, I can go to JNU, I can criticize India, I can say anything. But if you criticize certain other people, then that is outside the limit. Now, my point is, please have the same law, the same rules for everybody, for all castes, all races, all religions, all society, for for old, for men, for women.
Sir, sorry to interrupt you because there's limited time. I want people to respond to what you've said. Thank you for making your point so passionately. I would say that this applies on both sides of the kind of ideological lines that divide us today. There's a lot of name calling that goes on. And in fact, today, if you don't fit in with the dominant narrative, which clearly belongs to the right of center, you're often called an anti-national. But I think you raise an important point. Mr. Bhushan had the option to not pay the fee because he believed he'd done nothing wrong. I do want to ask Yogendra Yadav. I know Mr. Bhushan's statement had said he would submit himself to the punishment that the court decided. But it could be read by some that by accepting the punishment, he is accepting the verdict, that he was contemptuous.
2 quick things before I answer that, Barkha. I used to believe that nodding your head is part of freedom of expression. It seems we are changing our definition. Speaking someone else for preventing is bad, but I believe I continue to have the freedom to nod my head this way or that way. I hope so. Number 2, there should be this challenge not only about Hindu-Muslim, I think there should also be JNU challenge. Can you speak for 2 minutes without talking about JNU? Would be lovely to have these things. I completely agree with General Katoch. Of course, Prashant Bhushan is completely irrelevant, as are people like us sitting here. The only thing important is about institutions. I'm so happy that he's concerned about institutions. So who's damaging the Supreme Court of India when the court picks up 2 tweets, spends so much energy, when out of 31 judges, 1 particular judge is picked up for a certain bench. When bench behaves the way it does, how many people in the country would have said, "Kash, mera case bhi itna phatapat ho jata jaisa ye case ho raha hai." Who is damaging the Supreme Court there? We should really think about it. And I'm absolutely sure General Katoch, because he's not lacking in courage, as is clear from his words, he would not be lacking in courage to speak about who's damaging the court. As for Prashant Bhushan, what he's doing is in truly Gandhian spirit. This is not a kushti. He was not into a wrestling with any judge or someone. On day 1, he clearly said, and I just read out what he said, not today, what he said on day 1. He had clearly said, I am here to cheerfully submit to any penalty that can lawfully be inflicted upon me for what the court has determined to be an offense and what appears to me to be the highest duty of a citizen. So if today Prashant Bhushan had said, no, I don't accept the lawful penalty, you would have turned around and said, Acha, parson to tum keh rahe the you will submit to a penalty. Today you are turning around.
Okay.
It's not a business of I dare you, main ye karke dikhaunga. No, it was a Gandhian spirit of submitting to the authority of the court. And what Prashant Bhushan did right from day one, right till now, is only to serve and strengthen the Supreme Court of India. And by submitting to their order, he has done exactly.
Okay. Let me get Shubhrashtha and Maneesh, and then we'll have to take a last round of comments from everybody. Shubhrashtha, you indicated in your comments that whether, despite differences, you said you have nothing in common with Prashant Bhushan or Yogendra Yadav ideologically, but you believe this free speech is a sacred right. Do you believe the Supreme Court made a mistake that in some ways it actually inadvertently made a hero out of Prashant Bhushan? It ended up possibly making if they had sent him to jail, he would have certainly been a martyr today for the free speech cause.
Barkha, like you imagined a situation of what if Prashant Bhushan, what people would have surmised if Prashant Bhushan acted the other way. Let me also give you a situation, whether Prashant Bhushan agreed on the Supreme Court verdict or not, people would have campaigned for and against him like it's happening today, irrespective of what the court had to say. My limited point in this entire narrative is that people who speak the most about speak the most about the fact that you cannot speak in this nation, ironically, is the most spoken about campaign line before every election. This is one point. And the second thing which I want to bring to the table is let's remember that our democracy is not built on the edifice of a French Revolution, etc., etc. We have had our own journey of democracy and secularism and all these different definitions. The way in which I would articulate will be different in the way Yogendraji would articulate, will be different in the way Major General Dhruv Katoch would articulate. Yeah. Major General Dhruv Katoch comes from an army background where sanctity of institutions is of paramount importance. The kind of conversations that I had in campuses in DU has a completely different view of institutions, where you deride every institution before you actually offer.
But can't we all be fellow citizens while disagreeing? I think that's the point, that we have forgotten how to be friends, colleagues, even opponents. That amiable disagreeability has gone out of our lives.
Barkhaji, you would agree, right, that prior to 2014, there were certain editorial voices in the country which were somehow more legitimate than the Twitter trolls. You would agree to that, right? Somehow there was the sanity in conversation, etc., etc. Then why is it very difficult for us to believe that in this moment, when there is democratization of voices, however, whether we agree with it or not, whether we, absolutely hate it or not, let's accept it with a pinch of salt. Let's accept that we as a nation are at fault and we are in the process of rectifying many different wrongs that have been committed.
Okay. So this is a point that has long been made, that there was an ideological dominant narrative before, and now it's been replaced by another ideological dominant narrative. I want to come back to the case itself and the verdict as we take last comments. Maneesh, I want you to talk a little bit about the Attorney General. I think not enough has been said about the fact that Attorney General Venugopal was not in favor of any punishment to Prashant Bhushan. Subsequently, neither he nor the Solicitor General gave his consent for a petition that wanted Swaraj Party, the actor, to also be tried for contempt. Are we seeing some sort of shifting analysis within the government about the blowback that comes from such cases? And some commentators have said that this is a moment that reminds people that dissent is still possible. Many people believe that dissent is no longer possible when you have such an electorally powerful dominant narrative. Is this a reminder indeed that dissent is still very possible, that voices are not choked?
Before that, I'd like to just make a small comment. Let it be in nobody's mind that this Supreme Court or any Supreme Court is infallible. They have known to have made mistakes in the past. You had this ugly spectacle of a former Chief Justice of India, 3 decades later, repenting what he had written in a judgment in the habeas corpus matter. And, in 2006, Justice Yogendra Yadav, the then Chief Justice of India, he told me in an interview that, we are not computers. We make mistakes, and if you have a larger bench and if one of the judge dissents, that does not mean that two people who are in majority are right. Maybe tomorrow the dissent turns out to be correct. This Supreme Court, we all must understand, is supreme because it is final. There have been voices in the US. Jurists have said that had there been a bigger court than the Supreme Court, maybe half of their judgments would have been set aside. So coming back to what the attorney and the solicitor have done, what I find strange is that now we have come to such a pass where we have to laud somebody who simply follows the due process. What they have done is not out of the ordinary. If what Swaraj did, or if what I have done or say or write, then every second day there will be thousands of cases, requests to the attorney and the solicitor for filing clearing contempt cases. I think the focus that the Supreme Court needs to have, or focus, is that how to get its own orders implemented. There are thousands of, it shocked me when I read that report. The Law Commission in 2018, it referred to a report where it said that there are thousands of civil contempt cases pending in various high.
So Maneesh making the important point, I'm paraphrasing for him because the line to him seems weak. But he's making the point about the number of civil contempt cases, Maneesh is back, number of civil contempt cases that are languishing in court, and how the court needs to turn its attention on that. Very quickly, because we're on the last 2 minutes of the program. General Katoch, I'm going to ask you this briefly, please, sir, because I have only 2 minutes left on the show. Coming from as glorious an institution as the army, I would actually make the same point about the army. The army has broader shoulders. It should be, it tackles insurgencies and separatism. So it should be able to accept criticism on the chin. Similarly, the court is our conscience keeper. It should be able to accept criticism with what Soli Sorabji said in an interview to me, broad shoulders, khula dil. Even if you don't agree, khula dil. Do you not agree with that, General Katoch? And then I'll give Yogendra the last one.
See, criticism is fine. As an army officer, I have never been afraid of anybody criticizing me or the army on a point of principle. But you see, when the criticism becomes vindictive, when the criticism becomes destructive and designed to create a situation by which that institution becomes null and void and ineffective, the problems come in there. Very briefly, when we're looking at insurgency and the way the army is handling it, and I've got all these intelligence reports, so I'm telling you firsthand, it is a ploy of the Pakistanis and the Pakistani handlers and the insurgents to discredit the Indian army in each and every way. And when we find our people actually towing that line, we are towing a line which is really not appropriate. When we are looking at the apex court, I am a firm believer we require to revamp our complete criminal justice system. We don't have law in India. We have lawyers. Our problem is that we don't have law, we have lawyers. We have destroyed our concept. Our entire legal system, from every single lawyer to the judges, is in disrepute. Now, we need to fix it. Now, we cannot fix it by one person coming and criticizing one of the judges in the apex court. Please get together, find out systems, right? If you feel that your election commission not working, get into systems, right? But it automatically we find it working when a particular party wins, and it is not working when another party wins.
Absolutely.
As an army officer, because you mentioned my army background, Barkha, one thing I want to tell you as an army officer, we don't look at caste, color, race, creed, anything, right? We look at India. We look at everybody with the same eye. We look like Maharaja Ranjit Singh with one eye when he said, everybody I look at with one eye. The day our people, my friends like Yogendra Yadav and Prashant Bhushan and the rest, both from the left and the right and the center and from God's side and the devil's side, when they start looking at things with one eye, I think we are a happier country. We are not reaching there yet. Please, let's reach there.
Okay, I'll give Yogendra Yadav the closing comment. Yogendra Yadav, beyond this moment, and you opened by saying it's not a victory or a defeat, but there are learnings. There are learnings for us as a country. There are learnings for us in the media. There are learnings for you in politics. What would you say your learning has been?
My learning has been that however dark the time, however difficult the situation, there is something in this country that comes out. I was a child during emergency, but I knew my father felt at times that nothing would happen. And then we saw 1977 and how people flowered. This last 1 month has been a learning for me that there are so many courageous people who are willing to come out. Dissent has been acceptable. Some window has opened. Mission demolished Prashant Bhushan. I do not know who designed that mission, but the mission was defeated, and that's so critical to the success of democracy. But I will end on a very positive note to say, listening to General Katoch, I almost felt he's going to join campaign for judicial accountability and reform that Prashant Bhushan runs, because what he prescribes is exactly what Prashant Bhushan has done for 30 years. Gather other people, make constructive suggestions, do not go to public before you approach the institution. That's exactly what he has done. And I thought Shubhrashtha was actually going to join Swaraj Abhiyan, because what she suggested we should be doing during COVID, my colleagues and I have been doing exactly that. Currently, we are in Mission Jai Hind, going to villages, doing exactly what she has been prescribing. So welcome to both of them.
Okay, I have to end, but I'll allow Shubhrashtha 10 seconds because I see your hand up. Shubhrashtha,
Barkha, now that we are in the moment of appropriating statements to suit political interest, let me also congratulate Yogendra Yadav for joining the RSS, because this is exactly what the sun says. There's something about this country that allows you to be. I would end on that note.
That's what Iqbal said. That's what Mohammad Iqbal also said. Thank you. Glad you reminded that.
Okay. You know, I actually see no problem with a little bit of ideological appropriation, because maybe it reminds us that the well-intentioned on all ideological camps have the same thing, should have the same interest, which is this country. And I think we really need to get to a point where we can disagree without being at each other's throats. We do try and do that on this channel, on this platform, on this program, irrespective of our own individual opinions. But I think we cannot take away from the fact that what has happened in the Supreme Court today has been significant. Prashant Bhushan could have caved in. He could have apologized, and he refused to do that. And there are very few people who in that last mile stick to the courage of their convictions. Even if all of us disagree with Prashant Bhushan, you'll have to grant him that. He stuck to what he believed. Let's leave it there. Yogendra Yadav, Shubhrashtha, Major General Katoch, Maneesh Chibber, pleasure as always. Thank you so much to our audience for watching. We'll be back tomorrow evening with a deep dive on the big story of the day. Thank you.